So, as I mentioned earlier, it is Juneteenth today. Happy Juneteenth, the first U.S. official Juneteenth. Very exciting. So, what is Juneteenth? Okay, so Juneteenth is also known as Emancipation Day or Liberation Day. The celebration of Juneteenth started in 1866, specifically in Galveston, Texas, to commemorate the anniversary of the announcement of General Order Number 3 by the Union Army. So, General Order Number 3 of the Union Army was the order that was the military order that was derived from the Emancipation Proclamation that was written and signed by Abraham Lincoln in 1862. So you'll remember, hopefully, that the Emancipation Proclamation simply said that in states that were no longer in the Union, so in Confederate states, slavery was outlawed. Okay, this didn't count the two Union states. I believe they were Delaware and I can't remember the other one. It did not count for the two northern states that still had chattel slavery. But essentially, because this order by the president was directed at states that were not in the Union, the primary enforcers of the Emancipation Proclamation were actually the military. So the Union military. So the Union military translated the Emancipation Proclamation into General Order Number 3. Okay? So, essentially, wherever the military went, the General Order 3 was read out and the slaves were let free. Some of them joined the Union Army, some of them just went to own property, some of them fled to the north. Lots of things happened. But that is how the word about the Emancipation Proclamation actually got around to the South during the Civil War. So, why do we celebrate Juneteenth on June 19th, and why specifically 1865? As you remember, 1865 is the end of the war, right? 1861 to 1865 is the U.S. Civil War. So, the Union Army finally got to a town called Galveston, Texas, on June 19th, 1865. And they read, I forget the name of the general, they read General Order Number 3 there, officially releasing the slaves, the last set of enslaved Africans on Confederate soil. And so this is the kind of the final watershed moment where the Confederacy is done and there are no more slaves being held in the Confederacy. And so this celebration, it originated in Galveston, Texas, in 1866 to celebrate June 19, 1865. However, the celebration quickly spread across the South. So originally, the celebration was meant to be kind of a church festival, was kind of spiritual, was very much non-commercialized. It was very kind of personal. People still remembered either being in slavery or they knew people who had been enslaved. But over the course of the late 1800s and early 1900s, as it spread across the South, it became commercialized a little bit, as many holidays in the U.S. tend to become, regardless of their significance and original intent. And it became more of a food festival. So, celebrations of Black cooking, celebrations of Black culture, whether it's African culture or culture that, was combined from African culture, so what is known as like Southern culture or Black Southern culture, Black Southern cuisine, but additionally things like Jamaican culture and some of those other areas who also had enslaved Africans carted over from Africa against their will. So, Juneteenth wasn't really an official holiday in the US for a very long time, and just this Thursday, June 17th, 2021, Joe Biden signed an executive order, I think it was an executive order or a law. It doesn't matter. Joe Biden signed into being that Juneteenth will now be a federal holiday. It'll be a holiday just like any other. Hopefully you'll get off for it, and you can celebrate Juneteenth. And this is really exciting. It allows for America to kind of officially recognize Juneteenth. Hopefully the event will be taught in schools and things like that. So if you're looking to celebrate Juneteenth, it became a food festival. So I think, in my very humble opinion, that one of the best ways that you can celebrate Juneteenth is to eat food from Black-owned businesses. And if you do not know any Black-owned businesses in your area, there are two applications that, no one's paying me to say this, by the way. There are two mobile applications that you can use to help you find Black-owned businesses, specifically Black-owned eateries in your area. So the first one is Eat Okra. It's available at eatokra.com. I believe it's also available on the App Store, whether you're on iOS or Android, which I guess the Google Play Store. And there's Black and Mobile. And Black and Mobile is essentially a delivery app. I believe it's a delivery app that allows you to find Black-owned businesses that are near to you and get you some delicious food delivered from these places to help celebrate Juneteenth by supporting Black business ownership and small businesses at the same time. So really a great way to celebrate. I highly recommend it. If you can, find yourself a Black-owned eatery and celebrate there today. It is really important that Juneteenth is now kind of in the national spotlight, that we were thinking about it, that we're going to have it off. Hopefully it means that we'll reflect on it and we'll teach our kids about it. So that's all great, and I don't want to discount any of that. I do just want to give a tiny bit of a cautionary measure because, in some ways, this is symbolic change. So what I mean by that is this fundamentally doesn't change the situation of Black Africans and African Americans in America. Now, it may change the way that they're perceived. It may change the way that people understand them and their struggle and things like that. But it doesn't change, it doesn't give justice, right? This isn't reparations. This isn't an end to police brutality. This isn't an end to qualified immunity. This isn't an end to restrictions on voting rights, right? There is lots of racism that still goes on, even though we're recognizing Juneteenth. So I think while it's important to celebrate Juneteenth and to say, hey, this is great, especially this year, now that it's official, we should make our celebrations extra special if that's something that you are able to do in any way that you see fit, right? There are lots of causes that need dollars, right? There are lots of businesses that need your support, especially Black-owned businesses. But we need to understand this as being a very small step in a broader context of racial justice and racial equity. The fight isn't over, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And if, there are lots of symbolic victories that we've gotten, right? That, people have painted Black Lives Matter on streets. They've renamed roads to Black Lives Matter. They have, cops have taken knees with protesters and things like that. But all of those things come together to be kind of visual changes, symbolic changes, little victories. And again, I don't want to discount the victory nature of them, but I think it's important that we recognize that the issues that Black people are facing in America are systemic, right? They have been more or less in the making for several hundred years. And even though discrimination didn't end with slavery, and we had Jim Crow and we had redlining, and redlining is a fairly recent practice. I mean, we're only going back 4 or 5 decades for that, and the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act were only passed in the 60s. So we're not even a whole century out of what was supposed to be a real change for Black Americans, and we still have lots of different types of racial injustices. So for every time we get a symbolic victory, we ought to celebrate. It's important to celebrate. Originally, this segment was going to be like, I'm not really sure you should celebrate, but I've talked to some people in my life in the Black community who have essentially said to me that, no, this is a victory and we should celebrate this. But it's if you're going to talk about it, it's important to talk about, kind of the other context of it. And so the context I'm trying to give here is celebrate because it's important to celebrate, and it's important to celebrate all of the victories that we can get. But at the same time, we should not be complacent. We should continue to fight. We should continue the work, because at the end of the day, the thing that will actually create a world where, you know, these holidays are more than symbolic victories is to help root out the systemic issues that plague our siblings in the Black community. So I think that's where I want to end this segment. Happy Juneteenth, everyone. I hope you find a way to celebrate. If you can, please support Black-owned businesses today. Of course, you should participate in Black-owned commerce as often as you can. But today, specifically, if you can, it is a great day to do that.